Today in episode 493, we're talking about how to help everybody do math, but it's more than that. And we have some language that will help every teacher who teaches a difficult subject be able to talk to students and parents about tackling that subject. So I think some of the phrases that are used and some of the language and some of the stories and anecdotes will be helpful for all of us teachers. I know certainly I'm going to use several of these expressions the next time I have a student struggling. So enjoy.
The 10-Minute Teacher Podcast with Vicki Davis. Every weekday, you'll learn powerful, practical ways to be a more remarkable teacher today.
Can everybody do math? Today, we're talking with math guru, Vanessa Vakharia. So, Vanessa, can everybody do math?
Absolutely. So I think there are two things. The first thing is when we talk about the ability to do math, we often talk about it as though it's like this innate mystical superpower you're born with, right? So you hear the term math person all the time. I'm sure you have kids that are like, I'm just not a math person, right? So first of all, we've built this idea up. Have you heard that before?
Oh yeah. They'll say I'm not a math person or
Totally.
or I'm no good at math, which is, we know that's not the kind of language we want them to use anyway.
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things is explaining to kids that math is not just being really, really fast at doing calculations or like getting a 95 on your test effortlessly. Math is the ability to solve problems. And when you show kids that they're solving problems all the time, like whether it be in sports or in art class or at home or while making dinner, they are all using problem solving skills. Once you start breaking it down that way, kids are a little more open to being like, oh, well, maybe I do like math. So one problem is when we talk about math, we often make it seem like math just has to do with calculating, right? Like getting the correct answer on a test or being really fast at mental math. But those are just small parts of what it means to be good at math.
So you work with a lot of kids who struggle with math, and you have one sitting in front of you who says, I'm just no good at math. How do you start by helping them see a problem that they can work that's practical and help them understand how it applies to life?
So the first thing I do when someone, and we're talking about kids, but often, and I'm sure you've experienced this, like most of the adults in my life say they're bad at math. So whenever someone says they're bad at math, I say, what do you mean? And often kids will be like, well, I don't like it, or I don't do well on it, or I'm just not as good as the guy sitting next to me. So I'll start really breaking down what that means. Like, what do you mean you're not good at it? Oh, I don't get the right answer, the first time I try, or I really, I've tried this thing over and over again and it doesn't work. So then I start talking about other things. Like, are there other things in your life you've tried really hard at that were hard at first? And that's really a really good sticking point for kids. Because, for example, picture when a kid learned to tie their shoelaces or tried to walk. Ask a kid if they found that hard. And they'll often say, well, yeah, I did find it hard. Well, can they tie their shoelaces now? Can they walk now? And you'll kind of get this kind of sparkle in their eyes of them being like, well, yeah, this was something I worked really hard at and I had to find different ways to do it. And, my mom or dad taught me these different approaches and now I'm able to do it. So it's kind of showing kids that you don't need to be born all of a sudden knowing like how to multiply 3-digit numbers, right? It's something that comes with practice and strategy. So that's the first thing that normally excites them. But, we're talking about, like you said, kids being like, oh, I'm never going to use this in life. Okay, so I have a really good hack for that one because we all, as teachers, get that question all the time. This is what I say to kids. So first I say to kids, do you go to the gym or do you play sports? Often kids play sports. If not, they understand what it means to go to the gym. And I'll say, what are some of the things you do when you're practicing? When you're at the gym or you're practicing for sports, and they'll say like, doing push-ups or lifting weights. And then I ask them, so then do you go out onto the street and just start lifting weights, like doing bicep curls up and down the street? And they're like, what? No, that's crazy. What are you talking about? And that's how I explain math. I say, exactly. So when you're doing all these arithmetic things or like, when you're doing mental calculations, it's not because you're going to go out there and start like, multiplying numbers as you're walking down the street, but it's making your brain stronger. And when you have a stronger brain that can do all sorts of cool things, you can solve problems in your life more easily. So it's just like working out a muscle. When you've been used to doing push-ups, it's not like you're going to go outside and start doing push-ups at your friend's house. Well, you might, I don't know. But maybe if your friend needs help moving something, you know how to have stronger arms to help them move that thing.
Yeah. So one of the other obstacles is anxiety. I know I've done SAT prep for many years. And when I come across those students who they may have a barrier about the test, or they may have a barrier about, either subject, math or language arts, whichever it is, part of helping them do their best is teaching them the relaxation techniques, because if you're defeated in your mind, you're defeated on the test before it even starts. How do you help kids with that anxiety that some of them feel when you just say the word math?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I love that you said that. And I love that saying, the idea of being defeated in your mind. So, okay, often with kids, I find that when you really break it down, the anxiety relates to failure, right? Like they're scared that they're going to fail. So for me, when I'm talking to them about anxiety surrounding math, I'm really breaking down the fear of failure. And I like to talk to them about how great failure can be. So if they're ultimately really, really scared when I say the word math because they just feel like they can't do it, or they're going to get a bad mark, or they're going to underperform, it's saying to them, what's the worst thing that can happen to you? And really thinking about that. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail the test. And what happens if you fail the test? Well, there are a lot of good things that can happen. And those things are you can learn from your mistakes. You can figure out how to do better next time. You can learn what study skills worked and what didn't. So I think the idea really for me around anxiety with kids is to show them that failure is not the worst thing ever, and it's not something to fear. And that often relieves a lot of the pressure, because I mean, kids are under so much pressure these days. This idea of like performing really well and getting really high marks is kind of, omnipresent. It's everywhere. So I think that's one of the biggest keys to combating anxiety is really, figuring out that the thing you're really scared of isn't so bad after all.
So Vanessa, as you work with kids who struggle in math, what do you think are some of the common mistakes that parents or teachers may make that get kids to the point where they just think they can't do it?
Okay, can I tell you honestly what I think the number one thing is?
Yeah.
We're going to just do a quick analogy. When a parent is teaching a kid how to walk, that parent believes in their heart that their kid is capable of walking, right? Like we're like, no, 100% they're going to be able to walk. So I'm going to coach them, and if they fall, I'm going to pick them up and I'm going to hug them, and I'm not going to yell at them because I know they can do it. I honestly think that we do not, as a society, believe that all kids can do math. I don't think we think that. So I think kids can really sense that. Like we give up on kids quickly, right? Like, again, it goes back to this idea of being a math person. I think most of us believe that there is a type of person out there that is a math person, and there's a type that isn't. And that, I think, is the biggest mistake we're making. Because I think if we all really believed, parents, teachers, but also just all of us, like on the planet, believed that everyone could do math, we would approach it very differently when kids made mistakes and when they felt discouraged. Because our attitude would be just like a kid who was like, oh, walking is so hard, I can't do it. We would be like, no, I know you can, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to get you there. Kids
want to meet our expectations. Mm-hmm. Very often I've found that when a child has a subject, I teach technology, and yes, there are kids who say that they're no good with it, but usually I uncover and I'll start talking to the mom or the dad, and the mom, will say, well, I've never been good with technology. Computers hate me.
Yeah. Oh my God. Totally.
Like, computers hate you? Like, really? Like, AI is not even really here yet. Computers hate you. Okay. Help me understand that. But the funny thing is that when I hear a parent say computers hate me, I've already usually heard the child say computers hate me. Kids do want to they love their parents, for the most part. Many of them admire their parents, and whether they admire their parents or not, a lot of them want to emulate their parents. So if they have someone in their family who says, oh, I was never good at math anyway, it's kind of like you've given them a get out of math free card.
Oh, I love exactly how you said that. And that it 100%. I don't know, like we have kind of an Ontario math crisis right now going on, where there are a lot of elementary school teachers who have math anxiety themselves, right? So it's becoming a big problem where, exactly like you said, kids are not only emulating their parents, but teachers are huge role models for them, right? Especially in the younger years. And they're seeing that their teachers are not confident with math and feel uncomfortable with math, and that passes on.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we've talked about a lot about math, that everybody can do math, that we have to set expectations, we have to make it real world and applicable to what kids do. We want to help them solve problems. We want to help it be practical. We want to help people know that they can do it. And indeed they can, because if somebody's doing it, then we can do it, right?
Totally.
Yeah. So these are some great math hacks. Of course, Vanessa has a book called Math Hacks that we'll link to in the show notes, and there are lots of ideas in there to try to help kids be able to approach and to do math. So thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you so much for having me. These were awesome questions and a really great discussion.
Here's your challenge. The next time you have a student who is struggling, stop, hit pause, and stop on the content for a moment and start tackling the mindset. Use some of the things we've discussed today, because I'll tell you, one thing that I have found in my experience is when I have a student who has an obstacle with my subject, usually the obstacle is in their mind, not meaning they're imagining it. It's real, but it's their mindset that causes them to have anxiety or issues or not wanting to tackle this topic or something else, because it's all about learning. And we want to help them not only learn our content, but learn how to approach content that's difficult for them. So giving them stories and anecdotes and ways to handle difficult things in life teaches far more than math or any other topic. So keep a list of some of these anecdotes and get ready to use those the next time you hear some of the things we discussed today, where people say, I'm not good at this or I'm not good at that, because we can help students and teachers overcome our anxieties, but it does start with tackling our mindset.